Welcome to Operation Healing Heroes. Join me in the boat today in beautiful Ladysmith, Wisconsin, as we honor U.S. Marine Ken Plant.
They served for us. They sacrificed for us. Their stories deserve to be told. Every military veteran has a story to tell. Join our host, Jay Garstecki, as we honor the stories of our true American heroes, one soldier at a time. The mission today is Operation Healing Heroes. Brought to you by Great Clips. On this beautiful summer day, Operation Healing Heroes traveled to Ladysmith, Wisconsin to connect with United States Marine Corps Staff Sergeant Ken Plant.
Ken.
Jay.
Very nice to meet you.
Real good to meet you.
Ready to do some fishing today?
You betcha. Okay, straight back. You got it.
Ken enjoys fishing, but his other hobby is puppetry. Puppets became an integral part of his life due to a life-altering childhood injury. Now, Ken uses his love of puppets to bring healing to others.
So, Ken, tell me, where'd you grow up and at what age did you decide you wanted to join the military?
Well, I was born in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Okay.
And my family moved quite a bit. If you ask me where I'm from,
Yeah, all over.
I have to say the United States. My dad laid out computers for Department of Defense. So every 3-4 months, he was finished. We would pick up and head out to the next destination, wherever that was. I have to row back to Manchester, New Hampshire, because at the age of 4, I was being babysat, and I saw a sword swallower on TV. So I got a coat hanger and bent the coat hanger, and I put it down my throat. And just as I put it down my throat, my mother walked through the door, and she freaked out, pulled the coat hanger from my throat, my palate, and ripped my vocal cords out. So I ended up spending 18 months at the Boston Children's Hospital, having reconstruction and rebuilding my palate. And the doctors were adamant that I wasn't gonna speak again. So at 6 years old, I'm unable to speak and enter a speech pathologist from the school district. And his name was Alan Green. And he was adamant that he would be able to help me out. So rather than go into first grade, I had a full year with Alan. And we moved because my dad had to work, so we ended up moving. Well, Alan packed his bags and he moved with us all the way through until I was in the 5th grade. Alan was there. So really about the 5th grade, he got me to the point where I was verbalizing, and that's when he had to leave, you know. And so at that point in my life, I was using puppetry to communicate. In other words, if you had to get up in front of class and talk about a subject, I had a puppet in my hand, so it was my puppet talking. I had no idea that what the sacrifice that Alan had made in my life until I got married in 1980. Because I would suppose at that part of his life that he too was trying to build a life and have relationships, which would have made it impossible for him to do.
After completing high school in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Ken decided to pursue a career as an eye pathologist.
I went to college there at Broward College in pre-med. I was working at the Bascom Palmer Eye Institute part-time, as well as 2 other part-time jobs, just to keep my tuition paid. And then the lottery came. Not the Powerball, the draft.
Operation Healing Heroes is brought to you by Great Clips, Northern Clearing, and by Enbridge.
Operation Healing Heroes is a nonprofit organization dedicated to documenting the lives of our U.S. military veterans. In addition, we also provide financial support and treatment for post-traumatic stress. Your donation will help heal our heroes. What do you got there, Ken?
I don't know. She's going under the boat. Hold on. Wait for it. Oh, we're in a pickle. Oh, what a dilly.
Hey, it's a muskie. We got the right thing.
Oh, look at that.
Ken's plan to become an eye pathologist was halted when his number was chosen for the draft. Instead of choosing a career path, Ken had to decide which branch of the armed forces to join.
When I got drafted, it wasn't a matter of whether I would go or not, because I wasn't going to be one of those draft dodgers and go to Canada. So I decided, rather than go in the Army, I would use my education and get a great job in the Marine Corps, right? So I went to boot camp in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. During various aspects of our training, one of them is going under barbed wire, and they set off live ammunition, and they have live ammunition firing over you with M60 machine guns. And one of the mines went off pretty darn close to my ear and ended up going to the hospital for a plastic tympathy, where they replaced the eardrum in my ear. But 3 days later, I was back to my unit. They didn't hold me back. And during advanced infantry training, I was in a helicopter, and we were conducting air-to-ground operations where you would come in and they would land the helicopter and you jump off the helicopter. And I had a anxious Marine who fired off a light anti-tank weapon, which is about 12 inches from me, and the back blast went into my right ear.
Oh, no.
This time it took plastic surgery in 3 weeks.
Ken's injuries caused him to miss his training. Unhappy with his reassignment to be a supply technician, Ken took matters into his own hands.
I wrote the Commandant of the Marine Corps, "Sir, I have extensive experience in high school in journalism and photography, and here you're short of correspondence and public affairs people." And my job then was to become the one of 2 correspondents for force troops.
So your job was basically to report the news.
That's correct. That's what we did. We shared with the public what their taxpayer dollars were doing. Some exercises were for internal purposes, but for the most part, the reason we were doing our jobs was to share with all the people in the United States what the Marine Corps was doing. I did that for 2 years, and they offered me a re-enlistment bonus if I would extend my time for another 2 years. So I took the extra 2 years, and I was then assigned as public affairs for this new job they had for recruiting. But they were short of photographers in the Far East. My commander told me I had 2 weeks to clean things up, and I would report to headquarters and in the Far East. I found myself by the year 1974 in a situation where what we call the triangle between Cambodia and what was then now Myanmar and China. We were there for humanitarian aid, but actually we were there to because there was a sighting of POWs involved in the mining that was going on there across the river. We were set up with a special unit, and their job was to get me in and document, get the photographs. Even with my best lens, I was unable to capture anything. So I had to get that shot. So I navigated against the water. And just as soon as I got ashore, I hit a tripwire. And boom.
Operation Healing Heroes is brought to you by Great Clips, Battle-Born Batteries, and by SKB Cases.
My passion, what I enjoy the most, is puppetry and writing about PTSD.
If you'd like to see more behind-the-scenes footage, follow us on social media and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're a U.S. military veteran in Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, or beautiful sunny Florida, log on to our website, takeavetfishing.org, to find an event near you.
While attempting to document the presence of POWs, Ken Plant hit an enemy tripwire.
There's a loud explosion, and next thing I know, I wake up and I'm surrounded by this contingency of enemy forces. We have training that we go through on a regular basis for such contingencies, and I pretty much kept my mouth shut. I didn't say a word. And they started torturing me and raping me. And the last thing I remember, that episode, I had my belt wrapped around my mouth and my hands tied behind my back, and there's a 2x4 coming out my head. And I don't know, it sounded like a bat at a baseball game where you can hear the player hit a home run. That's about the best way I can describe it. And the next thing you know, I'm waking up and I find myself in this damp, dark, muddy place, and I'm not sure where I'm at. I can't even describe the smell of this thing. It's like a thick mud, and I'm submerged in it. The only thing, I'm up to my lip. If I open my mouth, you know, I'm gonna get a mouthful of whatever this is, and it's right against my nose, and I'm laying there, and my legs, I can't move my legs. I thought, am I buried? I wasn't sure what I was. And a few minutes later, I started exploring around, and it was like a concrete vat. Finally, I was able to grasp my fingers into a slot at the top of the of what was to be my grave, and there was no one. They were gone. Everyone was gone. There was no one. It's night now. So I crawled, no clothes on, I'm naked. I pulled myself out and I crawled on both sides, and I'm bleeding. I crawled all night that night. I came to a village, and on the ground I was knocking on the doors. No one was answering. Finally, a door opens and this lady comes out with a baby, and behind her is an old man, and they pull me in. And the next thing I know, I have a medic leaning over me, and he patched me up, you know, the best he could. My head got enlarged to the size of an elephant. They don't know how my brain survived through infection.
Shortly after his recovery, Ken's term of enlistment expired.
In June of '74, I come back to the United States. I'm met by this group, I'm not gonna call them hippies, I'll call them religious fanatics who, you hear it all the time from people that it's stories, it's not true. Let me tell you, it's true. I had my dress blues ripped off of my chest. Coming off the airplane when I was coming into the gate, I had a couple of job offers lined up in California, working for Disney World was one. None of those panned out. So I go back to Nashville, Tennessee, because I had a few friends there, and I said, I've been having terrible nightmares, and I wake up at night with no clothes on 3 blocks away.
So at this point, did you recognize that you might be dealing with some PTSD or some issues?
PTSD in 1974?
Didn't exist, right?
That was the first time that I started my heavy use of alcohol and drugs. I was escaping, I was running. I find myself in 1979 working for Olin Mills as a instructor for a portrait studio, and I have a downtown studio for child photography. Using my puppets, I end up getting a DUI and getting into some other trouble, and things just got worse and worse and worse. It's a horrific life.
Take a Vet Fishing was created for those who served our great nation. A simple day of giving back has been the mission for over 20 years. Visit takeavetfishing.org to sign up for an event near you.
If you'd like to personally thank a veteran that you've seen in one of our episodes or nominate a veteran to be featured in a future episode, log on to our website, operationhealingheroes.org.
Operation Healing Heroes is brought to you by Recon Boats, Thorne Brothers, and by Suzuki Marine. Ken's untreated PTSD led to a life of substance abuse and suffering.
In 1997, I went to a veteran's house where you can talk about your experiences. So I'm sitting there waiting to talk with someone, and this Native American comes in and he sits down beside me and he says, you know, what's up? And I start talking to him and he's talking to me and we're talking about our war experiences. And then I said to him, how much longer do you think it's gonna be? He said, well, come on in. So all this time I'm talking to the therapist. He gets me into a recovery program in St. Cloud. And I spend my time at a drug recovery program. And in the process of doing that, they're talking to me about my experiences in the military and said, you're a candidate for our PTSR program, at that time it was called. So the St. Cloud VA program that lasts 12 weeks introduced me to post-traumatic stress therapy and group sessions. They wouldn't let me go after that 12 weeks. They said I wasn't ready, that I needed to go through it again, second time. I realized that you can't even begin doing that unless you're sober. There's no, you have to be sober to do that. Life starts to change finally. And I discover as I am getting sober and getting my life back together again, that there are programs out there that are available to us that all too many veterans don't take part of because they don't ask for help. I wasn't the last person to ask for help. But when I finally did, I got some help. But it takes work. It was a lot of work.
So I know you mentioned years after you get out of the military doing puppetry, obviously that had to tie back into your childhood, right? When you were trying to communicate using puppets. That's what Alan Green taught you.
Do you know that it wasn't until I was on the show today that I didn't realize that?
Really?
That I thought my reason for being an eye pathologist, for example, was my give back. But now I have to think back to Alan Green and what he gave up in his life and how the impossible became possible, what he gave. So it's my opportunity to do the same, to use puppets, to give back. I experienced this recently in doing a puppet production for a senior center where an elderly lady was sitting in the audience, and after the performance, with a couple of musical numbers and a couple of jokes, came up to me after the show and said, I had some brothers who served in World War II who were all killed, 3 of them. And she started talking all about her brothers and how they worked on the farm in Minnesota. And her daughter came over to me and said, what did you say to my mother? That's the first time she has talked for 8 months. I said, I think it's the puppets, not me. Today I'm just full of gratitude. And I think having seen much of the world and the conditions in which people live in, and the role of government over them, and seeing what we have here in our United States, even though things aren't what you and I always want, they're a heck of a lot better than what they are over there. After a A lot of my performances, people come up to me after I've shared about some of my experiences. People ask me, would you do it again? And I said, even with everything that happened to me, yeah, I would.
If you don't mind, I got something I'd like to give you real quick here. Something to commemorate our time together, if you don't mind. This is made by
Oh, look at that. It's got all the services on it.
Made by Thorne Brothers. It's a custom rod, and you're not going to look official without your official Pen Plant jersey.
Man,
so.
That's over the top.
There you go.
Oh, man.
Thank you for your service, sir.
No,
Appreciate
really, thank you.
If you'd like to personally thank a veteran that you've seen in one of our episodes, or nominate a veteran to be featured in a future episode, log on to our website, operationhealingheroes.org, and click on the nominate button.